Call to order tonight's meeting for the Select Board and Board of Public Works. Today is Monday, June 23rd, 2025. It is 6:01 PM. We are a 5-member board tonight, but we do have 1 member on Zoom. Can everybody on Zoom or somebody on Zoom just confirm if you can hear us okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay? It's Leah.
Yes, thank you, Leah. Thank you, everyone. We are on Zoom tonight. We are being live streamed for local cable access. We're being recorded for posting on YouTube, as per usual. And before we get started, if everyone could stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, moving into minutes and warrant approvals, we have a treasury warrant 25-26 and payroll 25-PW26 available. I should also mention David is out of the country on vacation, he's not able to be here with us tonight. And Donna sent the warrants, didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. So if there's no questions or discussions, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Alright, roll call, Alex?
Vote aye. Second aye.
Matt's and I.
Whitman, I.
Ledger, aye. Alright, and for our meeting minutes, we have just one set back from June 9th. And I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Alex?
Vote aye. Second aye.
Matt's and I.
Whitman, I.
And Ledger, aye. Alright, is there anybody here for public comment this evening?
Yeah, I guess it's.
Any address?
I have a frog in my throat. Jean Sigliano, Susie Drive. I'm here with some information from the event committee. We have been asked by the Historical Commission if we wanted to take part in the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And we have an offer from the Army Band to come and play. This is next summer, July 10th. We're looking at next summer. It needs a very large space. There are about 35 people and they need a space 40 by 40. So they're not gonna fit at the gazebo. So we're looking at maybe the basketball courts. Because that's a big enough, and they also need a place to change, which maybe there's changing rooms at the pool. So I just wanna put it out there, if there's any advice or guidance you can give us to move forward with this.
They have specific requirements that they're looking for, if you can just make sure that Tamika has that, then we can brainstorm some ideas.
Okay, I'll forward her their email.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
It's Leah, if I may, just to add, make sure that if we're using the basketball or pool or any of that space that recreation's involved, because the summertime is prime time for them with different leagues and parties and everything. So just involve them from the start, please.
Yes, and we have their application, but I wanted to talk to the board first before we did anything else.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else, Chief?
Okay.
Anybody else for public comment tonight?
Do you wanna talk about the Wachusett Road thing, or do you wanna do that?
We have Wachusett Road on the agenda. I was not going to open it for public comment, but if you have anything for public
I would
comment,
absolutely
feel
like to
free.
talk about
Name and
it.
address, please.
Okay, Carla Zottoli, Princeton, 295 Worcester Road, Princeton. We've been here a number of times. We had thought that this was taken care of, it was a public road, everyone thought so, and suddenly it's been called into question. There's been a bunch of mentions, and there always seemed to be something missing. The timeline didn't make sense, so we did a little research. We found a gentleman at Mass DOT, Mr. Tivnan, who had given Mr. Soderberg the information that he used in his presentation that he made for you. Mr. Tivnan was actually very surprised that no one from the town or your town council had called him for the information to back up what Mr. Soderberg had given you. But he sent me the information, and I think that if you were to look at what I gave you and what Mr. Soderberg gave you, you might see that maybe some of the information that you were given was not quite presented properly. There was some pretty creative editing. And if you look at the full documents, you will see that what he was trying to tell you happened did not actually happen. In the decree, discontinuance is not included, and that is what's filed in the Registry of Deeds. So I think you need to have that information. Mr. Tivnan would love to talk to you. I gave you his information if you'd like to contact him. There's no question this is a public road. If you go through the timeline that I gave you, you'll see from 1941 to the present, over and over again, how it is proven to have been a public road, at least 5 times.
Anyone else for public comment?
Karen Botruba from OCAM. I wanted to just mention that I submitted a package today. Oh, excuse me. And I just wanted to again say that there was a lot of misguided information that you brought up that you were using to determine if this road was a road or not. And I have 8 different examples of that the road is a road, and a lot of examples of the misguided information you received. So I want to make sure that's taken into consideration.
The office did receive the information and it's been distributed to the board as well, so we have that information. Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Okay.
On Zoom.
Oh, sorry, let's see. Michael? Name and address?
Hello, Michael Botruba, 68B Campbell Street. It sounds like we're not going to open public comment during the discussion of Wachusett Road. I guess to give us a fair chance to provide comment, is there a opinion of the select board at this point on what motion they would take, or what has the attorney provided for the town's what has town council presented to the town and their opinion?
We do have an agenda item to discuss the matter, and we'll inform the board and have that discussion once we get to that item on the agenda.
Okay, would there be a chance for the public to speak after that point in time?
I was not going to entertain any public comment for that agenda item for today. Are there any other comments, public comments?
If he's done. Julian Botruba from OCAM. How can we discuss an item and then not have it open to the public to find out what's happening? This is just going on way too long for something
I
that's...
understand, and we're trying to get to a point where we can have some sort of a decision, but it's not a public hearing. It's an item for the board to discuss with the information that we have and the next steps that the board would like to take. And that's what we are going to be doing with the agenda item when it comes to that.
I do have one more comment. I do feel that last week there was a lot of new information that we got and then couldn't make any comments. So it's very difficult, you know, I don't even think that sounds fair.
I understand. Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Anybody else on Zoom? Michael, you have your hand.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yep. I guess just a couple things that did happen in the last meeting after public comment was open. One item that seems to be recurring is that the board has said that there's been no evidence that the road is a public way when there was documentation from the town council that stated it was a public way, and then the board went on to vote based on it being a public way to discontinue maintenance, to discontinue maintenance, but maintain that it is a public way that could be reopened in the future.
Any other public comment for this evening?
I'm not getting any.
Okay. All right, if there's no one else here for public comment, we will move into communications, member comments, announcements. For today, just a reminder, school is officially out, so between that, we had summer fun started. Today was the first week. And there's lots of kids between Naquag and the pool. And the pool is of course open, so just be aware of increased pedestrian traffic in town. We have, I would like to congratulate Elizabeth DeFoss of our mass communication, or excuse me, our dispatch, deputy dispatch director. She was selected to be the 2024 Leader of the Year by the Massachusetts Communications Supervisors Association for their Telecommunicator Awards. So just wanted to congratulate her for that achievement. And also, again, congratulate Mrs. Ruth Lowe on receiving the 2024 Moses Howe Award, which that presentation took place at our first concert on the Common this past Friday. I wanted to also thank the board that was present to present that award. I unfortunately had a family event that was emergent that I was unable to attend last minute. So I thank the board for the presentation as well as congratulating Mrs. Lowe again. Next week already is 4th of July festivities, so obviously plenty of going on there for Rutland. The parade, I believe, starts around 2 p.m. and then there's fireworks that are 9:20 usually. And then tickets for the chicken barbecue are also currently on sale. That event is scheduled for Thursday, July 3rd from 4 to 6 on the Lower Common. And you can visit the Rutland Fire Brigade website for more information, and they have online ticket sales there as well.
Jen, could you also mention that the tickets are up for sale at the marketplace too?
Yes, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Tickets are also for sale at the Rutland Marketplace if anybody would like to go and buy them as well. Does there any other board members have anything that they would like to add?
I'm good.
Leah, anything for you?
I'm all set, sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to move into appointments and resignations. We have 2 resignations to review and accept for tonight. The first being the resignation of Skip Clark from the Conservation Commission. We do have the letter of resignation that was submitted to the town clerk's office and received and has been certified. So if there are no questions, I will entertain a motion to accept.
So moves. Second motion.
Any questions or discussion?
I'd just like to say, Skip has been on that committee for a very long time, so we appreciate all the time that he put into this town for his service. We thank him.
Yes, thank you, Harry. I echo that.
Very true.
All right, no further discussion. Roll call, Alex?
All right.
Second, aye.
That's a name.
Whitman, I with regrets.
Ledger, I with regret. Thank you. And we also have a resignation for the planning board. Same thing, we have a letter of resignation which was received and certified by the town clerk's office. This is for Britton Bradford from the planning board. And I believe planning board is currently having discussions on an appointee that will bring forward for next meeting to discuss, and that will be a joint appointment for the remainder of that, until next May for the election. Okay. If there's no questions or anything, I'll entertain a motion to accept the planning board's resignation of Britton Bradford.
So moved.
Second,
Any questions, discussion? All right. Roll call, Alex?
What I?
second, aye.
Matt's a nine.
Whitman, I with regrets.
Ledger, I with regrets, and thank you for his service. All right, and since we do have a room of people, I would ask if the board is amenable to taking the appointments out of order, just so that we can have people do what we want to get them appointed and they can head out.
You really don't want him to sit here and listen to us, okay?
If that's amenable. Amenable to
I'm
that.
fine.
Okay. All right, so we have quite a bit of information in our packets here. And Tamika, I think the one that you have in here is the ones that we're able to appoint this evening, correct?
Yeah, I didn't wanna confuse anybody, so I just did the ones we can take action on tonight.
Okay, and all of these, we have received letters of interest or applications of interest, as well as the recommendations from the applicable committee, correct? They've met and discussed, okay. So I think if we, rather than doing one at a time, how would the board prefer to do it? Just review if there's any particular questions for any of the candidates? Would you like to ask questions?
You know me, I'm always full of questions.
Which is why I just wanna make sure that
But
we're.
it's over 90 out, so probably passing that, but I would like to ask if there's anybody here that would like to make a comment on their position to a committee or board. If they have a yes, no, what they found that they'd like to do about it. We got a lot of shy people here tonight. Okay. Ben?
From the select committee, in our, at the bottom of our letter from the committee, we are asking that our appointment period be extended through the 4th of July festivities for a later date in July, if the board's amenable to that.
Okay.
That way there we can kind of get through, usually we start late June and then, the 4th, so we kind of like to wrap things up as a full committee, just in case there are any departures from the committee.
I don't think there's hardly anybody on here I don't know.
A lot of them are reappointments.
Right.
Okay. So we can start going through, I'll start with the, we'll start with the, town council. So if I will entertain a motion to appoint KP Law as town council for a term of 1 year to expire on June 30th, 2026.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Whitman seconds. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, any discussion?
Did we look into researching, KP Law's been with us for a while, have we done any research on it by the interim or the past town administrator for a new law firm?
There was no request to do so. We, I wanna say, sorry, Jen, if I may, 2 years ago, maybe 3, the select board had actually interviewed a gentleman from another firm and ultimately decided to stay with KP Law. But at that time, there had been a directive from the board for the town administrator to look into other firms and bring them to the board to be interviewed.
So something we can
Okay,
follow with them.
yeah, I think like at least every 3 years we should revisit this anyways.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right. Roll call. Alex?
What I?
second I,
Matt's and I.
Whitman, I.
Ledger I. All right, we have the slate that we can approve. How do we wanna do this with the 4th of July request? Should that be separate?
Yeah, I would make a separate motion to
Okay.
extend their expiration date. I would do that first and
Okay.
then make the recommendation to appoint them through whatever date you choose. I believe you guys
Okay.
had done July 31st when you appointed the 2 new members
Yep.
maybe a month or so ago. So for consistency's sake, maybe just do July 31st of 2026 and then everybody will expire at the same time.
Okay, all right. So why don't we do that first? So I'll entertain a motion to extend the appointment. What's the right word?
It's Priya, if you want, I can make a motion to extend the July 4th appointment term ending July 31st, 2026, so that they can finish out their 4th of July festivities.
Well, I'm wondering if we should make a more general motion that moving forward, it'll
Is
be
that what
July
your intent is
it'll be July
for-
31st of the calendar
Okay.
year. And then when you make the motion to reappoint these folks, then you'll specify that
Okay.
these particular people are through 2026. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah,
So
Leah,
one
are you
general.
okay with that friendly amendment to word it so that it's in perpetuity?
Yeah, if the board is amenable to extending for the 4th of July appointments through July 31st of their appointment year, then I am comfortable making that motion. I think it makes sense. We've talked about it, and I think this is the time to officially do it.
Okay.
Second.
First, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, Alex,
Hold on.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Ledger, I. All right. And then going through these, I will entertain a motion to appoint the board and committee members as a slate as presented on the fiscal year 2026 appointment list.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion, questions for anybody?
I just want to thank everyone for putting the time in to go to the meetings and seek reappointment, or appointment in general, and for the boards and committees to be willing to welcome new members in as well. I see we still have a lot of vacant seats, so hopefully we can continue to make headway in finding new volunteers to fill those too. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. All right, motion and a second, roll call, Alex
Hold on.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
With gratitude.
Whitman, aye.
and Ledger, I.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, and now if we go through, we have the liaisons, representatives, coordinators. A lot of these, we appoint the position, not the actual person within that position. That way, if anybody leaves, that we have that continuity if a new person starts employment for whatever reason. Any questions on any of the listed recommendations for appointment?
Question. The town administrator, we have an interim. Does he replace or take over for the chief procurement officer?
Yes.
When that is, okay.
Yes.
And I should point out for the records access officers, we added in Lieutenant Dan Collins and Jackie? No, not Jackie.
Deputy Fire Chief Quinn.
Thank you. I knew there was two that we added. So we added those in just to have the additional access to get any of those that information.
Can I ask why? What was the reason?
So in the event that either of the chiefs are not available and somebody comes in specifically requesting information, they would be able to provide it as the RAOs. This is something that we had discussed with both of the chiefs and they were in support of this. We were also removing Director Moriarty, because with the switch to the district, he's no longer a town of Rutland employee. So to fill that gap, the chiefs felt it was fair to put their second in charge as RAOs.
So we have the town clerk, assistant town clerk, and let's say fire chief. If they're not here, anybody else can, or it doesn't matter, any of these can get at the records anytime they want.
So so only the people that are listed on that list are allowed to access the records and provide it to the public on behalf of the town. So they can send the request to the employees to say, hey, this is the information we need, but it has to come from those individuals as the RAOs.
And if I recall correctly, I think it's dependent on the information. So it's not like something for a select board would go to Chief Knight for a records request. It has to, it'll get funneled based on the
We specifically have
request.
general government and public safety. So for example, Jackie is the one that provides police reports when people come in. But they wouldn't necessarily just be able to walk in the door and get a police report from a dispatcher because they're not a records access officer. It would have to follow the chain.
So, help me clarify here. So if something relates to the fire department, the fire chief would ask for it. Or if something relates to whatever, the fire chief can ask for it. I'm trying to find why we need so many people here. Because unless there's a catastrophe, somebody's gotta be working at some point to be able to get records for us. So I'm wondering why we were adding the other two.
Again, it's just dependent on the type of information being requested. So if
So-
it's related to public safety matters, the request to gather that information would go to the appropriate chief. And if Chief Knight, for example, is not available because there's a time limit that we have to provide that information, Deputy Quinn would be responsible for working to get that information within the allotted time frame.
Okay, so it's dependent by department, so if it's a safety issue for the police department, they would request the information.
would
Anita
get it.
or assistant town clerk would not have the right to ask for that,
It wouldn't go through them.
it would,
Right,
okay?
Yeah, town government would go
So it's not
through them.
them asking for the information, it's the public that's coming to them and saying,
Right.
we need access to this information. Technically speaking, we're only adding one person because we're removing Mike from that list. So this was something that we brought to both of the chiefs first. Well, I did include their email in there just to make sure that they were on board with that. And Lieutenant Collins and Deputy Fire Chief Quinn were also both in support of that. For example, Chief Monaco was on vacation this week and he was put in charge as next in command. So if something happened or came in, he would have the ability to respond accordingly.
And not to sound a little off, but these are not separately paid positions to do this.
Nope.
So it's not costing the town any money to add people.
No, it's just part of the job responsibility.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, then I will entertain a motion to appoint the liaisons, representatives, coordinators, and professionals as a slate as presented on the fiscal year 2026 appointment list.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Alex?
Vote aye.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Ledger, aye. And we have one more for the CMRPC representative. We have one vacancy and we have Jean here to appoint as the select board, appointed by the select board for the CMRPC representative, select board representative. Any questions for Jean? Then I will entertain a motion to appoint Jean Sigliano as the select board representative to CMRPC for a one-year term to expire June 30th, 2026.
So
Second.
moved.
Second.
Paul second.
Paul, did you second?
He did,
Okay, Paul seconded.
just like same exact time. A little too quick.
Any other discussion? All right, roll call, Alex,
Vote aye.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Whitman, aye.
and Ledger, aye. And
Thank you,
we,
Jane.
yes, thank you, Jean. And again, thank you to everybody that's volunteering for all of these. We do still have some vacancies and I think we're still waiting for a couple of people who were not able to attend tonight's meeting and waiting for a few more letters of recommendation. So we will be having another one of these at our next meeting on July 7th, just to get in any stragglers that were not able to make it here tonight.
Jen, if I may,
Yes.
I think per a new bylaw that any appointments that weren't done by by July 1st are default to vacancies. So just make sure, please, I'm not there that boards and committees realize that they may not have quorum because if they don't have their appointees. That makes sense.
Yeah, and good.
I will definitely communicate that to
Okay.
everybody tomorrow to follow up, and I'll also send a reminder for everybody to stop by the town clerk's office to be sworn in. The good news is the way that the timing works out from the committees I've talked to, many of them are not meeting between now and July 7th because of the holiday.
Right.
So hopefully it won't turn into too big of an issue for
Okay.
anybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. I figured you guys were on it, but it just popped into my head. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Leah. All right, any other business we took care of the expiration date for 4th of July, that's everything for appointments, yeah?
Yes.
All right, so anybody that's here for that, feel free to head out. All right, and
It's not. Well, that explains why
Well,
it's.
there's gonna be central in here.
You're so
It
silly.
would be a lot hotter in here if there wasn't some sort of central.
Are you new to town? You don't have central
Yeah, there's some air flowing in down here. It'd be way hotter than it is
Maybe
right now.
maybe from upstairs, cause they have the AC on upstairs,
Maybe.
possibly.
And while we also have Mr. Sullivan here and Michelle, is anybody have a concern if we were to take the RDIC request next, just to allow them?
Nope.
Okay. All right,
Sorry, I can't figure out how to raise my hand here. Can you hear me okay?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
Daniel Gracie.
Sorry, thanks, Dan, go ahead.
Sorry, were you gonna address the CIPC appointments as well?
Oh, so Dan, we did them as a slate, so they
Yeah.
did everybody
those were
all
in
at
there.
once.
Yeah, they
Yep.
were
Okay.
on there.
Everybody's in there.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, thank you.
Yes, we're all set with them, thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, so RDIC has submitted a request to change the makeup of the commission from 6 members to 5 members. We have a memo from them. Mike, I don't know if you wanted to just briefly.
I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Question through the chair. Mike, how many have you been running with on the committee? That show up as a quorum after you do have one.
Well, that's the problem. Some years ago, the select board changed our committee from 5 members to 6, which makes no sense to have an even number of members on a committee. We can't get 6 members to serve. We're lucky if we get 4. Problem that creates is when you have a 6-member board, we need 4 to have a quorum. If we only have 3 people show up, we're dead in the water. So that's part of the reason that we, are asking to reduce it to 5. We posted this, I've got no interest, welcome anybody, but that's the genesis of this.
Okay, thanks.
We had a similar situation with Historical Commission a few years ago where it was a 7-member board and just the lack of volunteers, we moved it down to 5 as well, so.
It's Leah. I think having an even number for a committee is really tough anyway, so I would support having it go down to 5 given the quorum issues. Ideally 7 would be nice, but not quorum issues, but also volunteer issues. So I think definitely an odd number board is a better policy kind of.
Any other questions or discussion from the board? If not, then I will entertain a motion to reduce the number of members on RDIC from 6 to 5, effective immediately.
So moved.
Second.
Other discussion? Roll call, Alex?
Hold on.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Whitman, I.
And Ledger, aye.
Thank you.
Alright, so we will go back to the old business and start with Wachusett Road. So we left last meeting with an additional packet of information that had been provided, which has since been sent to town council for review. There was also a question of trying to gain access to the county commissioner's documentation. We have an email from town council in our packets that after reviewing the information, that there wasn't any additional information provided that has changed their guidance that's been previously provided. I did speak with the attorney regarding the county commissioner's records. It seems that they're notoriously hard to track down, an entire slate of documents. I think some of them are in some of the literature that we've received to date. So at this point, it's I'll open it for discussion on the board if there's additional questions. But as of right now, we still have no change in the guidance provided by town council.
Can I just ask a question to whoever handed this to us? On one of the pages, you said that one of the documents was changed or edited. I'm not following what you mean by that, I'm just trying to understand.
Can I point it out to you, or?
Sure.
Okay, so if you look at what he gave you, he cut it off here.
Okay.
And left it there, and then the second page, he just took little snippets. But when you look at the entire document, you see that this was the petition in 1941.
Yeah.
And then it was finally brought to vote in 1956. This is what, so this was proposed, this is what got voted on. He never showed you, and it's got 3 pages.
Okay.
He never showed, he only took
He
a
took the
little.
top, okay,
Yep.
all right, I
And
understand.
he took the top and tiny
And
little.
part of the
Yeah.
bottom, I got you. Okay, thank you.
Which left out the important part, clearly.
Board have any questions or discussion?
Did the attorney receive any of this information?
I don't, I
Everything-
would never talk to the
Everything
attorney.
has been going through the office.
Well,
To the
that's what I'm
attorney?
saying, we just got this tonight, so
This-
our attorney did not have a chance to review this, is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct. And that's something that we as a board need to review. And I've asked the question of, you know, we continue to get packet after packet of information. And as of right now, the guidance hasn't changed. If it's the will of the board, we can certainly forward this latest packet of information for review.
I guess for me, we're looking at a very issue here, if you will. Town versus builder in terms of the cost, in terms of law. And I guess I don't wanna be a type of select board member that doesn't look at every minute detail to make sure that we're in compliance and that everything has been done. So for me, I will read this, but again, I'm not an attorney. And I guess I would like our law firm to review these current documents. But before I finish that, how much of this document was in the previous document you handed us?
0. I
Zero.
just got it from Mr. Tivnan from the Mass DOT. And he's got a whole package of things he put together. So that's why I gave you his address. He was amazed that the town had not contacted him. He's got things that are registered with the Registry of Deeds, plans, these kinds of documents, all of which Mr. Soderberg got, but apparently never told, for some reason, didn't say where he got them.
Okay. So for me, I would like to make sure I do my due diligence, and I understand there's a cost to the town to do this, but I feel in all fairness to every citizen in this town, we go to the lengths that we can to make sure everything is right and every I is dotted and T is crossed.
Yeah, I mean, we said it was on, the people who bought the properties and the building, who sold it, to prove to us that it is a town road, so it's only right that we, any information given to us to prove that is reviewed thoroughly, so, yeah, I agree.
Leah, did you have anything to comment?
No, I was just gonna say, I personally am frustrated that we got this packet, that last meeting, we got the packet at the meeting, this meeting, we got this packet hours before the meeting, when we usually are provided at least 48 hours for all the information, and I realize that this is coming in not through, any of us, but I didn't have time today to sit down and review all of this, so I think that, it's a little frustrating that we are constantly handed new information at the 11th hour and expected to base our decision in encompassing this new information.
I didn't have an opportunity, when else would I have had an opportunity to give you this information? And frankly, the town council should have contacted the Department of Transportation.
In some respects, I do agree with you, Leah, but the problem isn't ours. Now they have to wait longer. They have to wait for our decision. If they had gotten the stuff earlier, we may be able to solve it. So we're gonna do our due diligence, but it's just forcing them to wait longer for an answer, so I don't see an issue particularly in that.
We're not gonna take
Mr.
public
Comment.
comment. We're not gonna take
We
public comment.
can't give you any information
Go
because
through,
you
we're
won't
not
let us speak
taking,
when you're talking about it.
Any information that you have can certainly be submitted to the office for distribution to the board.
Ridiculous.
Is there any other discussion or a motion that anybody would like to make with regards to submitting the newest information for town council review?
Do we need a motion to submit this, or
I would prefer to have one, yes.
I'll make
I
the
was gonna say, am I hearing, sorry, Alex, am I hearing that the board is wanting to move to submit the new information received today through the office to town council for review?
That's the, yes, for discussion or motion.
That's what Harry and I both suggested, yes.
I mean, that can be I can make the motion, but that's, yeah, if that's what you're comfortable with, I'm fine with it. I just, like I said, my frustration is all the communication can be through the office, and to be getting stuff at the, so last minute. To Harry's point, I agree, it's just delaying things but then to say that it's our fault that it's delayed is my frustration also.
I was just gonna add, if in the motion you could also include the documents that Carla provided tonight, because we got the ones from Karen earlier, and then this is a separate package.
Both.
Oh, can you keep a packet for me then, please, someone, because I'm obviously not there to see it.
Yeah, we have one, and will you be able to scan it in
Yes.
tonight's? Yeah, so
I
we'll
have
get
it.
you an electronic copy too, Leah.
Okay, thank you, and I don't mind stopping up once I'm back, I just,
The,
I'm not there.
just
I'll
to
take it.
clarify though, the documentation, the email that was sent earlier today, none of that is new information. That's just compiling the information that we've already seen.
There is no.
That appeared to be a lot of the past minutes that are in past packets of information that we have seen. So, but
I-
if we want to include that, that's,
There is new
There's-
information in that.
There is no information in that.
And the packet we received?
Yes,
Yes.
email.
Via email, not this one here.
the one from this morning.
Especially the new information on what you had brought up last time, the
1956 document.
1956 document.
We can send both, we just want to specify that in the motion.
And I would edit my motion, I would move to send the information we received through the office this afternoon from Mrs. Vitruvo and in the meeting tonight from Ms. Zotley to town council for review.
Okay, there's
Second.
motion, second here. Any other discussion? All right, roll call, Alex?
Second, aye?
Mattson, aye.
Whitman, I.
Ledger, aye. Alright, so we will send that for review and we'll wait for their response.
Just a question for clarification, how many days before a meeting do we have to submit things so that it is clear? A week, 2 weeks?
There isn't necessarily a timeline, just if whenever there is something available, if it can be sent to the office for distribution, then the board will have more time to review it for discussion.
Okay,
Jen, if I may, I post the agendas the Thursday prior to the meeting, and on that same day, I send out the packet, so the board has them over the weekend to review everything.
okay.
So I would say by the Thursday prior is probably
That's
the
good.
best option for them to have the most time to review it.
Okay, thank you.
Alright, moving into next item, we have to put our Board of Public Works hats on. We have the water abatement request that was reviewed at our last meeting. There was a little bit of follow-up that we wanted to have done, namely that the water meter that was tampered with, we just wanted to confirm with the DPW that whether or not that would have had an impact on any of the readings that were taken, and I believe Director Kolowski had stated that that should not have had an impact on the readings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And some additional information on just how much water can go through due to even small, what we consider small leaks. So there was some additional information there. And I believe I thought we had a memo from Director Klosky.
So
Did we
it
have
wasn't a
one?
specific memo, but he provided a copy of the sheet that they keep in the file just to show that the meter was properly working
Right.
despite having been tampered with.
Did he provide a recommendation though?
In his original, he
In his
provided a
original.
recommendation to not
Okay, That's what I-
update, he
that's
did
what I
not
thought.
provide anything updated since then.
okay, yeah, thank you. Is there any other questions from the board or discussion? Leah, anything for you on this, based on the new information?
No, I mean, it sounds like the meter doesn't really have that much of an impact, and that it was really the leaks that were the driving force.
Right. I agree, Leah.
And it's unfortunate. I think we all, to kind of reiterate, Jen, what you said with or Tamika with what Director Klosky said, I think we all underestimate how much even what we think is an insignificant or small water leak ends up costing.
And as an aside, maybe it's worthwhile sending out an email blast or a Facebook post with some of this information,
Absolutely, and we
just so
can
that
add it
people
to the
can be aware.
website too, so that
Yeah.
people have, I was thinking about that after he gave it, and I was gonna see if he was okay with that, cause I agree with you, I think it's good information for people to have.
Just to have, okay.
That, and I think that there's a way that you can, that like residents can test themselves, putting like food dye or something in the back of your toilet tanks to test
Yeah,
for
these special
leaks.
tablets.
And just so that way people can kind of be a little bit
Mhm.
more proactive, because it's some of those like home ownership things that I don't think any of us are like specifically educated on until we have a leak.
So you have a problem.
And if I may, one other tip that Chris gave is just periodically looking at your water meter, and if it's moving, that means that there's probably something wrong, you shouldn't be able to see it kicking through, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Alright, so we have the information, we have two proposed motions, I'll entertain whichever the board would prefer to go with based on the,
I'll make a motion. I move to deny utility abatement request as presented.
motion. Is there a second?
Second motion.
Any other discussion? Alright, roll call, Alex,
All right.
Second, aye.
Matt's and I.
Whiteman, I with regrets.
Ledger I with regrets. Okay. Moving into new and special business, we have a one-day liquor license for Lilac Hedge Farm. Let's see, for the July 3rd, it says Rutland fireworks, but for July 3rd.
The fireworks are on the 3rd,
Fireworks, yeah.
the fireworks are always the night before.
Okay, I thought I saw something this just today that said the 4th, so thank you. Alright, so July 3rd, 2 to 10, and this is in the town center, and everything was,
Yes, and Jen, I don't think you're wrong, because if I remember correctly, I think Bed said that there was a typo on one of
Okay.
the schedules of events.
okay, maybe
And they
that's
didn't
what it
realize
was.
it till after they went to print, and I apologize, Ben, if I'm misstating it. So that might have been
That might have
where
been what
you
I
saw
saw,
it, but
yeah.
yeah, it's always on the night before.
Always the night, okay, perfect. Any questions?
Sorry, I'm looking at it, but are they just doing beer and wine? Are they coming in under the fire brigade to do full alcohol?
Correct, they are working with the fire brigade, a portion of their sales are gonna be donated back to them. So working with the fire brigade as a nonprofit organization, they were eligible to apply for all alcoholic beverages.
Okay, thanks. I was pulling up the thing. I thought that that's what I saw earlier when I glanced at it, but I wasn't sure. Thank you.
And this is similar, this is just what they did last year, correct?
Yep, same thing.
Okay.
And they did pay the 60?
They did,
The reason I ask is Lilac is not in Rutland
they are.
in terms of the Holden, so I didn't know, were they Lilac Hedge or Lilac Hedge and Holden, which one was supplying?
Yeah, so their public location, I guess, is the 216 Wachusett Street in Rutland, and then the
Okay.
Holden one is more of their farm operation.
Okay, thank you.
if there's no other questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the one-day liquor license for Lilac Hedge Farm, July 3rd from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. on the town common.
So moved.
Second?
Any other discussion? Okay, Alex?
Hold on.
Second and I.
Mattson, aye.
And Ledger, aye. Thank you. We don't have, I said about 7:15, right? Okay, so we will skip over the change in library hours until I believe we're gonna have some representatives from the Board of Trustees attending, but they were not able to get here until 7:15. So if that's agreeable to the board, we'll skip and start our multi-year forecast review. So this was an item that Alex, you had brought up, but I think the board was also in favor of just taking a look at the multi-year forecast that Austin had drawn up, just having some general discussion, sort of setting the stage for with the fiscal year 26 budget that was approved, where does that leave us with the upcoming year, and start talking through potential outreach as far as, do we want to do any outreach for residents as far as what sort of budget season, that they would be willing to entertain, whether it's override, no override, if there is an override, how much, do we wanna do anything like that? And then what the board's feelings are for.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, in the immediacy, and obviously there's a lot to talk about here, I think we need to look at informational, setting up informational sessions throughout, starting as soon as possible to at least inform whoever we can get to go what we're looking at and what we're seeing and the direction we're heading here. We did make a lot of cuts in this last fiscal year to balance the budget. Not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot of cuts, but we made a good amount of cuts in FY 26 to balance the budget. Going to FY 27, forecasted, of course, that's not final, right? It could change and it will change, of course. We're looking at nearly $3 million that would have to be cut. I think the public does not look at this on a regular basis, right? They're not looking at this sheet, or, I know this is up on the internet, but they're not looking at that either. And we need to do everything we can to make people aware of what's happening and where we're heading. The decision on what to do with that, I think, is obviously a larger discussion, and I'm happy to entertain that and start talking about that. But I think in the immediacy, we need to start getting out there and putting official sessions on in cooperation, hopefully with Finance Committee, hopefully to help with that kind of disbursement of information. And anyone else, I don't know if this is something that our interim town administrator would really be looking at because it's an interim and is not working full time, so that might be a difficult thing to put on him. But some sort of representation from the town would be a good idea too. So that's where I'd like to start. Then again, we need to have a conversation of, to your point, what we're gonna do about a $3 million deficit going into FY 27. I think that updating this is gonna be necessary. Austin was the one who created this. We need to update it based off of the most recent information. And I'm not entirely sure how we can go about doing that.
Might I make a suggestion? Perhaps we could go back to all the departments and say, look, here's our projected forecast. What do you see that has changed? Because we're looking at a 8% increase. What has changed? Is it more or less? And I won't say less because most departments won't be less. But has that changed dramatically? If not, at least that'll give us a basic for a footing that we can feel somewhat comfortable with.
And speaking of the departments, I just even recently with the 26 budget, I'm sure this will come up with our library discussion. I just heard from the fire chief when I was up in town this morning, the cuts that were made for fiscal year 26 to the purchase services lines, a lot of them have concerns about being able to pay their utility bills because that's where they fund those payments from and from their purchase services. So just for me, it's also understanding what's being cut and how I even have concerns at this point, just how are we gonna get through FY 26 with the cuts that were made, and how are we going to be able to do that? And where, if we can't, where is that going to come from, or what else gets cut or changed? We can't close down the public safety buildings if they don't have enough money in their purchase services lines to pay for utilities. So, but having those kind of discussions of, you know, where the cuts were made with the department heads, you know, how did they feel about that cut? Like what would have been their alternate plan? No, if they knew they wouldn't be able to pay utility bills, for example, where would they have made a different cut? If we, you know, retained all the staff as was requested, with everything, so that's. And I agree with you, Alex, I love the concept of informational sessions. Unfortunately, historically, no one shows up.
Yeah.
So I don't
I
know
don't disagree with
if
that.
there's alternate means of outreach to the public just to get any input. I don't have a lot of good ideas.
If I may, Jen, I know during the last budget season, a suggestion was made to Austin to do like a brief YouTube video. Mike Nicholson did them a lot during COVID, where he just would kind of summarize the information and put it out there so that people could watch it when they had a chance without having to necessarily watch the recording of an info session, but just kind of boil down the points, because I think that for most people, we're gonna reach them electronically versus in person.
Okay.
And then perhaps doing something at our senior center for our seniors in town that are not as comfortable doing it the electronic way.
I mean, and still offering informational sessions, you know, it's an
So-
opportunity for people to come, just if
If I
there's
may
other
then,
means.
are we looking at informational sessions based on an override of $3 million?
I
I guess that's what
I
I'm
don't
trying to
think we're
get
there
at.
yet.
What are we going to present that in information sessions, or maybe I'm jumping ahead?
I think for at least my vision of where I saw this starting, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, if this isn't what you were thinking, was to have some sort of outreach to present, this is where we're at. We're looking at an almost $3 million deficit, give or take, depending on how some of this changes. We've already cut $1 million from the budget for FY 26. So where are we gonna come up with this approximate $3 million? We will never survive $3 million worth of cuts. So is that, if you're not willing to entertain an override, or if you are, what amount are you willing to consider? You wanna do it from, you know, a year to year? Do we just do it enough to cover one fiscal year? Do we do something, consider something larger like we had talked about in the past, a multi-year? Or if you're not willing to entertain, what are the services that you feel should not be what's your priority of services that you want to keep? And it can't be everything, we had a hard
That's what I'm
enough time.
saying. You know, if we're looking to keep everything the same, giving them an option of saying, look, we're gonna pretty much fund everything, but it's gonna be a $3 million override. That starts the discussion. Because with the cash position we're in, our bond ratings, it's gonna be real tough to take another $1 million out of the town this year. So that was my point of getting at, we need to look at 3 million, and then we say, well, you don't like that, which departments would you cut? Really make it a conversation, I guess that's where I
Yeah.
was coming from.
It's a
This
starting
is,
point.
this is one of the comments that I heard repeatedly after the budget came into play this year, okay? You know, where was the information? How much did the public really get their hands on to know what this was all about? Okay, and I heard that comment repeatedly.
And that did come up at the info session that I was able to attend last year, was that it's extremely complicated. So how can we boil it down, to your point, with the important points to get across to the residents what this means? And
That's putting it in a nutshell, yes.
do you know, does this right here, the 2.8 million, does that account for, like, that accounts for right now and then increases for the next year. What about the 1 million that we cut? If we wanted to replace, reinstate what those cuts were, it would add another million to
I don't
this?
know that for sure, but I would be willing to bet that that million that we cut is not included.
Is not included in this.
That's my understanding also, Alex, that it's
Okay.
not inclusive of
believe
the million that we cut plus million of free cash, one-time revenue that we used.
Yeah, cause if you were to go back and look at it, I believe the deficit for 26 was like 2 million and
Yeah.
then 27 was
Yeah.
4, I believe.
And I
So-
think the date on it is April. That was the most
Yeah,
recent one that I
So
could
just
find.
before, okay, so in theory, if we were to reinstate what we cut, mostly through purchase services and supplies, we would need to add back those previous cuts.
I guess I understand what you're saying, but I guess I'd like to see if we actually cut $1 million in supplies and services. I mean, the cuts were all over the place, but did we really cut $1 million in support? When you add them all up, did we really cut that? And that would be the discussion going forward. In other words, if we did, then we got something to present to the townspeople, you know?
Well, and that's part of what I would like to convey and where I had some frustration was the cuts were to purchase services, but what does that mean? I can't go to a resident and say, we just cut purchase services because they don't see what that impact is. So when you learn that that's the account that the different departments pay their utilities out of, that's the kind of information that we need to have available so that the public can understand what that actually means. It's not a loss of services per se because all the staff are still there, you know, the recreation's not an example because they're their own fund, but we're not losing services per se, it's just, what does it mean?
Yeah, and I'm gonna put on I'm sorry, she had her hand up.
Karen Narwhal, Palmagussit Road. I don't believe Austin told the department heads where to make the cuts. I believe the department heads made the cuts. So I don't believe he said where to make the cuts. Did he tell you where to make the cuts?
Select board made the budget.
Austin made the cuts.
They
It
made
was-
the cuts.
It was presented
It
to
was-
us
we
that
So
way.
made
you
cuts
folks,
that were
okay,
different.
cause that's different than we've ever done. Okay,
absolutely.
great, thank you,
Yeah.
Uncharted ground.
thank you.
Jen, I just had another thought too. We've had really good luck with surveys, and I wonder if it might be helpful to put a survey out and kind of get a taste of the residents of, you know, are you open at all to an override? And if you're not, what services are you willing to live without? Cause I think a lot of times we go based on a supposition of what we think residents may or may not wanna see. But we might get a lot more feedback through that route than we would with the people coming to an information session.
Yeah, and I'd almost, you know, prior to that, or, you know, at the beginning of that, want to ask the question of what do you not understand about the budget? Like, what information is confusing to you? What can we help clarify? What do you want to know so that we can help share that information in an easier manner? That way we can. Go ahead, Leah.
It's Leah. I just wanted to say, I think one of the things that had come out of the previous information session was even, you know, I had a lot of residents when we were talking about the quote unquote slash and burn budget was, you know, we have to preserve public safety and DPW, like police, fire, and DPW, the dispatch at the time, because they were still regional. And even with those three, there still would have had to have been cuts. And so when we start talking about needing to cut $2 or $3 million or $4 million, that's more than the smaller departments. And so I don't think that the public is necessarily aware either that the big three are what percentage of the budget they are, and then what, you know, that there would still be cuts to those.
No, I think that's a good point, Leah, because even this past round, they still took, I mean, just because of how much their budgets are, they had significant cuts. And it's gonna come to a point where you can't cut purchase services anymore, you're gonna end up having to cut staff because you don't have the money to pay the wages. I mean, I don't know if anybody has kept up with what's going on in Paxton, but they're in a lot of trouble just like we are, and they're having trouble not just retaining staff because they can't afford it and they have to cut positions, but getting new people to come in. You know, it's tough, and we don't wanna find ourselves in that position. So, but those are the things that if we can share that, you know, yes, public safety is not immune, you know, as much as we, you know, we want to keep, as important as they are, if we don't have the money to pay for the staffing, it's not going to be there.
Yeah, I agree with you that, but ultimately, it's the Paxton, it was the town's decision to cut all those services. It wasn't the select
Correct,
board.
because they did not, but that's those are the conversations that I feel like we have to have, and we have to get out there to the town, that public safety, being public safety with fire and police, is not immune from losing staff and not having, you know, enough patrols out, or, you know, fire staff on staff. It's just, they're not immune, and it's, like I said, Paxton is an example of that when they voted down the override. That's where we're gonna find ourselves.
Well, and I think I think that we're in that spot a little bit now. Like, the push was to save personnel pretty much at all costs this past year. And as a result, you know, I've been saying all the way through, we're saving personnel, but they're not gonna be able to do the work because they're not gonna have the supplies or the power or the utilities that they need to do their work. So it's great that we're saving staff, but they aren't gonna be able to do their jobs. And so I think that's where we are now, and next year we'll be potentially looking at having to make significant staffing reductions.
Yeah. But I think that's where it's gonna be important to really have the discussion with the department heads, looking at their departments holistically, so that we're not just cutting one place that isn't going to prevent them from operating with what they have. They need to operate, whether it's with less staff, whatever they need, but they need to be part of the discussion.
Well, the state will come along and say, if you have this many people, you need this many police officers, okay? And you need firefighters, EMT trained to this level, okay? So these are the things that, you know, you've got to be thinking of as you're starting to put together budget figures and this sort of thing too.
And I know we had also floated, cost saving measures, you know, different ways that we can look at regionalizing certain services. You know, where can we take advantage of something along those lines where we can share the cost with other towns? We're not the only one facing these struggles. So if there's opportunities to do that, you know, we currently have an interim town planner, but is that a role that we could reach out to some of the neighboring communities? Is it worthwhile regionalizing that position as a cost savings? Are there any others, you know, where that could have an impact?
I think one of the, obviously the largest item is the school district. We need to be asking and requesting from them an expected 2027 budget now. The complaint is that we always get it last minute, and it always has an impact. We never know what that number is, and it's such a big piece of it that not having it until that last minute is criminal, really. There's always gonna be unforeseens that you don't know what insurance is gonna be, you don't know what, X, Y, there's always things that are gonna change towards the beginning of the new fiscal year, the end of the current. But let's be honest, they have a figure that they already have in their budget for all those things. They have a 3-year, 5-year forecast. 5 is probably irrelevant, but they have a 3-year forecast, taking into account the current, I can't think of the word right now, the funding from the state, whatever that's called, hold on, Melissa. They have all those figures in play already, so there's no reason we can't get that information ahead of time. The minimum contribution is an impact, but we could probably come up with a decent calculation on what that impact would be. So I mean, if we can get their forecast earlier, and by earlier I mean like we should be requesting that now, in the hopes that we get it within a month or two, so that we have that information going in to planning.
do we have any, I mean, if, just for planning purposes, but I asked the question of, you know, they're gonna give us a number, we don't really have much say in what that number is outside of town meeting saying no. So it's,
My thought was that maybe this is the year we reach out to the other towns. And we develop a little consortium, if you will, and say, of all the towns out there, this is the best we can do. So we're gonna hurt, and we're gonna ask you to help us in that pain a little. So if we have to cut 1% of our budget, then whatever budget they propose, they should cut 1% of their budget. I mean, all we want is for it to be fair to everybody, including our students. But if the town's impacted the way it was last year because of their increase, boy, it's gonna be tough for this town. We're gonna be a town of paying for the high school and that's it, because we can't afford anything else. So how do we share in that is what I'm looking at. And if Paxton can't afford it, if Sterling and Princeton, well, Sterling was having a little bit of a problem this year because we went to the meetings. I went to the meetings to high school. But if these towns are gonna be hurting next year, then everybody has to work together to say, overall, our towns can afford 5%, not 7 or 8%. So how do we arrive at an agreement that makes sense for everybody? Because it is a district, and I find we're always fighting the district one town at a time
We
instead of coming together.
We can have that conversation with the towns, but at the end of the day, it's the townspeople who are gonna vote on the school budget, and if we plan in that direction, and then the town votes that they wanna accept the school budget as proposed, then we're at a point where we don't have a plan. I mean, we need to plan towards a worst case scenario, and if something happens, then we can plan the other, a backup plan, but we have to plan for the most conservative approach that the school district is gonna get the budget that they're proposing.
and I think conveying what the impact on town is to be able to make up the difference that's gonna be required is where we're gonna need to make sure we have all that information.
Yeah, if we accept the school at face value. And as due diligence, as a board, I don't think anybody should ever accept anything at face value.
But to Alex's point, the sooner that we can start getting information
Trying to
from them.
negotiate, yeah, something.
Yeah, or it's just planning at this point, I
Right.
mean, it's the sooner, cause you know, I know this won't happen, but God forbid the school budget comes in at 18.5 instead of 19.2, well, you know, that's now we have a $2 million problem versus a $2.8 million. It's, we need to get the most updated information, and I believe they're still expecting us to be in hold harmless for FY '27, but I personally haven't heard anything different of that, and I think it'd be good to get an update on where they think we are for that. So I think reaching out to the school to get, you know, our 60% of our budget sooner than later is only going to help us.
Name and address. I think part of the problem that I've learned over the last year and trying to, actually more than a year, it's been several years, that we're finding that our district, being a regionalized school district, is like the lowest funded by far regional school district in the state. And I think rather than fighting amongst ourselves, like between the town and the school district constantly, it might be helpful if the 5 towns banded together at the select board level to push the state to fund us properly, to fund us where we really need to be, because I think that's part of the problem. In some years, it's a different town, it's like whack-a-mole. It's usually been Rutland, and sometimes it's Paxton, and sometimes it's Sterling. And those numbers fluctuate depending on how many kids each town has going to the school that year, right? So I think it might be a a good idea, not only just kind of getting the towns together to see what they can afford, but getting you together to push the state to change the funding formula so that we are, and it's the transportation funding in particular, part of it is the transportation funding. And I think if you guys push the state from the town level and not just from the school district level, it might give us more leverage to get some more funding from the state for the school district. And that's where some of that alleviation of the town's expenses can come from.
Yeah, I mean, I hope something comes of that. I think we should always be doing that, so I'm definitely not against it. I don't wanna give false hope, I guess, is the problem there, cause feel like that's been tried in different angles, but it's certainly worth doing, there's no doubt about that.
Trying again, yeah.
To that point, we should be trying that every year, like we should be trying that constantly, cause there clearly is an issue, I mean.
And if the towns can show, like you can show what services are being cut, what we have to cut, and it's not like we were an extravagant town to begin with, and now Paxton, like, I think if the towns really plead the case of this is what it's doing to our towns, it might have a better chance coming from the select boards and the finance committees.
Yep.
Carol Benoit, Truckee Hill. I think there's a couple of pieces of information, and you reminded me of that when we talked about as population of the schools increases. So in the projected forecasts, there's no new growth. It's stagnant at 250,000. And then it begs to question, is the Wachusett operating budget, is that including more students, or is it just a percentage of what it is today? And so then those two numbers, if we're not increasing new growth, then we probably shouldn't be increasing the percentage increase on the operating budget for Wachusett, but if we're increasing numbers, then we should reflect that in new growth. So I would think that that's a question that needs to be asked when you start looking at updating this chart. The other thing that I really want to call attention to is, and I don't know, again, what is a percentage increase on a budget and what is maybe some of that an increase in students to Bay Path. If you're looking at between 2025 and 2030, there's almost a 100% increase in budget, operating budget for Bay Path. It's 98.5%. So we keep talking Wachusett, but this past year I started looking at Bay Path and thinking, because it's a smaller percentage of our budget, we don't give it as much weight, but that's huge. A $6 million increase in 5 to 7 years.
Well, they also only charge us minimum local contribution, so it's by law, we have to fund them.
Right,
Whereas Wachusett does give us the additional. So
Right.
we're bound to pay that regardless.
But if that's their budget and they're increasing it that much, can they give something, can they back off of their budget a little bit too? I just pieces of information that aren't apparent in even how the numbers are gotten for this spreadsheet.
Yeah, and just a point on the new growth. I know that the new growth number was put in there conservatively, of course, when doing this, and there's no doubt that number should theoretically be higher. What it is, who knows? And I know that when I talked to Austin a little bit about it, and he said, legally you can only put in to a budget X amount of, expected. So I don't know if he was trying to be conservative or what was happening there. On the fact of new growth versus the Wachusett School District budget, we may not have a single new house built, but if you have turnover in a household with 0 kids, a house then, turns into a house with 3 kids because it got sold. We have no new growth, but the school district count will go up, right? So it's not exactly proportional, and I would probably say that it's improportional because generally speaking, the people moving into this town are people with kids.
But I guess looking at it, I would wanna know what the projections are built on.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Otherwise you are making up numbers to some
Which is
extent.
what a forecast is.
Yeah, but
Alright,
We got one more question, Jen.
yeah, go ahead.
I just want to go back to when you were talking about informational meetings. The kind of information that might be helpful is I believe you folks, if an override fails, will have to make a budget that meets that lower number. So perhaps the information could show exactly that. How many, are there 4 police on duty an hour now and it would be 2, or really clear, here's what we have if you pass the override, here's what you'll lose, exactly what you'll lose. The library will be closed 2 more days a week. The senior center will be whatever. It needs to be information like that, because otherwise you're just saying, don't pass an override, or pass an override. But we need to know what we're losing if we don't pass an override.
And I think that's where I was trying to get this past year by having the cut budget done. And I understand, we went through the exercise of this is how we need $2 million to fund, status quo for, fiscal year 26. But my question in asking for the cut budget was to do exactly that, to understand what would be lost if it didn't pass. And we can't understand that information without going through the exercise of doing that. And I realize that's 2 different budgets for our departments to do. But it's, something that we're gonna have to decide, as a board moving forward, how do we wanna handle that? Because I don't think it's responsible of us to ask for any sort of override monies without understanding what we're asking for and what the impact is gonna be if it doesn't pass. So just having that.
Yeah, my only caution on that, and I think this is some of my differing, is anytime we start talking about cuts, then it becomes toxic. And we saw that this past year with employees and department heads and staff pitting each other against one another, or this group versus that group, or leveraging who's going to get cut or who's not going to get cut. And it becomes really, really, really terrible. A terrible working environment, a terrible town environment. And so I think anytime that there's the discussion for cuts and it comes to reduction in staff, I don't know how to do it in a way that is going to be beneficial to town.
Well, I think to that point, we could talk about, so if we can get the school's forecast, the 3-year forecast from the school, it brings us out to FY '29, which is, currently showing a $7 million loss. We could probably tweak numbers and get that down to 6.5, depending on what comes in. And at a $6 million deficit, it's not really a question anymore, it's just we're cutting everything. So it kind of makes it an easy conversation, because it says if we don't have an override or something doesn't change, we lose the town, right? It kind of nulls the conversation, and we don't have to pick and choose what's being cut. It's just we're going to the minimum services that are required to be a town at that point. Because that's half the town operating budget, just FYI.
Yeah.
It's almost $13 million is the town operating budget. And so if we had to cut $6 million, that's half of the budget.
Alright, so as far as next steps, how does the board feel about doing some sort of a survey to try and get, what do you want to know, what can we share with you? What would you be willing to entertain as far as overrides? What are your feelings that can?
Yeah, it's always a good idea to get the public input.
I like surveys, and my only problem with it is participation. If you have a survey and you get 10%, all you're doing is getting 10% of the town. That's the problem. So we might wanna set a benchmark where we get 30 or 40, that's our benchmark to say, when we get that, now I think we have a relatively fair aspect of what the town wants.
I agree.
And I don't know if we're gonna get there.
I just don't know if we're gonna get there.
That's my
It's-
problem.
So what do we do if we don't get there? We just ignore it and move on?
Well, you're gonna be
percentage of
very
people that
selective on it.
Vote, yeah. I mean, we're gonna get the people that we send this to, it's gonna be the same people that vote. And I hate to say it, but those are the people that are involved, and those are the people that are getting out and trying to do something.
But I think you find at every election, Alex, if I may, there are a lot of people out there who don't voice their opinion until
I
they get
agree.
to the polls.
I do agree.
But by that point, it's almost too late where have they gone through the exercise of reviewing all the material and understanding what that vote, yes or no, means? And are they just voting based on their feeling that they don't?
Yeah, I'm not saying don't try it. I think everything needs to be done possible.
Yeah.
I just don't put a lot of faith in polls. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but at least it's something and we can say that we did the outreach, we're trying to provide the information that people are asking for. And if those are the people that are voting, then those are the people that are voting and they're the ones that we have to try and reach and convince.
Or do you try what Tamika said, which is put something out on a YouTube first before you do it, for those that want to be educated before they answer the survey? Because I think the thing is, most people don't pay attention, and if you put it out there and say, you know, review this first, then you might get more opportunity. But then you're also gonna need the calculator up there for people to understand what that affects them.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely, I like that. So there's a couple of specific points, again, setting the stage. This is where we're at, this is what we're looking at. You know, just to inform them of what's to come, and then maybe.
But I would say Donna should be able to go through and update
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
that multi-year forecast, at least with better numbers at the top line.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so.
then at least that way we're dealing with better numbers than numbers from April that were flawed to begin with, as all forecasts are.
And I do think that, Jen, to your point, going back to the departments and saying, you know, what is realistically needed. I mean, I would guess if we asked what's really needed from the departments, they would say reinstate the budget that we asked for in FY '26, yeah, right number.
At minimum.
At minimum, plus, you know,
It's the bare minimum increase.
yeah, I mean,
That doesn't even get, you know, accounting for inflation, that's just getting them back to where they were.
It's level funded, which is
Level
a cut.
funded, not level service, so it's still technically a cut.
but I mean, I guess I'm trying to think of like, what can we do in the immediacy
Right.
to get something created, where, cause if we went back to departments and said, hey, you know, we want you to create an FY '27 budget now, and we entered all that into this, and then we do that again in like 3 months when we actually get started going towards budget, it's a lot on the town departments to ask them to do this over and over
Right,
and
and
over
we don't
again,
wanna
so I'm trying to think of how can we do this in the immediacy, so I mean, we could take the FY '26, add 5% per department for inflationary aspects, cause we did, it was levels funded in FY '26 to for the most part. So when I say 5%, I'm saying, because we're talking about 2 fiscal years now of difference, so 2.5% roughly per fiscal year, so a 5% increase in each department would give us a ballpark of what we need to look towards for FY '27.
Okay, so we'll see what we can do as far as updating the forecast, we'll loop in Donna, see what she can help with, and obviously when David gets back, we'll loop him into this whole thing. So we'll look at updating.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a comment on the survey. I'm all fine for sending out a survey. I like some of the points of trying to get information out first before just sending out a survey. But also that we take that information not as total representation of the entire town. Through some of the master plan surveys, I think we did huge pushes to get as much representation out from that. I think we got about 800 responses for that. But then for like the town charter, we had like maybe 16 or 20, maybe 30 responses for that, and a lot of them were from the same kind of pool of individuals, and so some particular groups may just be more prone to taking a survey or not, and so I just want to make sure that we're not saying we're going to dictate all of our, and it's hard to capture demographics in a survey, that we're not just deciding, oh, well, we're not going to do an override because we had 100 responded survey and 85 of them were against an override, because that's obviously just a swath of population and not necessarily the entire town.
I agree, and I think, Harry, that's kind of what you were getting at as well, is it could be skewed based on who's submitting responses, and I agree, Lee, I think, you know, as a board, we have a duty to, you know, recognize what this town needs in order to operate for the residents as they expect, and as part of that duty, it's to show them how much money that requires. And if, I'm with them. The school is a tough part of this discussion because we don't have much of a say as far as what that budget is. And we just need to do the best that we can to say this is what the town should have, this is what is required to operate it, and do the outreach and the education that we can, and if it still gets voted down, then
At that point, it's on the
at
townspeople.
that point, it's the town has voted and said we're not willing to contribute more, and then we have to go through that unfortunate experience of where those cuts happen.
So we're updating the multi-year.
We'll update the forecast.
Can we make a official request to the school district to get a forecasted number for FY 27 through 29?
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, a 3-year forecast. Or maybe they give us 26 or 28, but whatever we can get.
I thought they did say they were working on that, right?
I feel like I've heard that for a long time, but
True.
I say that in the
But
nicest
we'll
possible
ask.
way.
We'll ask.
If you're listening.
So we'll request that. I agree, starting with a video just to set the stage with what we're looking at would be a good idea, just to get that out for people to view. If the board wants to send ideas into the office, we can kind of collate, what do we think is important to convey as far as, again, just setting the stage,
the
this is what
summary.
we're looking at. Then we can talk about the best way to do that and who wants to record it.
But in all honesty, there's probably programs out there that we can use where we can, where it's not just one person talking to the screen. We could kind of do it. I hate to say this, but like they would at the elementary school
style,
level,
yeah.
where you make it fun and you make it something that somebody wants to watch and
That's
and
easy to
easily
digest.
understood. So maybe that would be more appealing than someone just talking to the camera. Unless that's something that the board wants to do, which absolutely.
No, I
Cable could
agree. I
probably
think
help with that, but-
having a mix would be a good idea, just that way, people can read things as well. Sometimes me just watching somebody talk, it's easier to read things as well while you're listening. So I think we can come up with something, but again, if important points that the board thinks they would like to convey to set the stage, we can collate that and we can come up with maybe an outline of what that information is and then work to put something together.
Oh, I just had an idea. Then at the end of the video, maybe we could have the link at the end of the video to say, now that you've heard this information, if you'd like to take our survey to provide your feedback, then that could be one additional way to get the survey out to the residents.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
a
we
thought,
can
like
certainly look at that
twofer,
too.
I don't know.
And so maybe as part of that, just specific questions that we think would aid in, the further discussions as far as. And I go back to, what Shrewsbury did, where they did their multi-year override and they had a document that they came up with prior to town meeting, prior to the election that said, this is what we're looking for, this is why we're looking for it, here's what we're going to give back to you if you vote for this, meaning we will not do X, Y, Z, we won't ask for another override for X number of years, those types of things, just, having something along those lines. I don't know if we're gonna have the discussion of, do we go for a multi-year corrective right now, or are we just looking for a 1 year, we can still have those discussions, but I think something along those lines that we can hold ourselves accountable for what we're asking for and what we will end up, providing for the town based on that ask.
But just don't forget that Shrewsbury has complete control of their school.
Their school, correct.
So there's a very
That's a big
big
difference.
difference.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, so again, just whatever your ideas are, just send them through the office, we'll try and come up with some outlines and we won't, of course, post anything without making sure the board reviews and has approval, so but the sooner we can get that information in and start working on this, the faster we can get it out and get information to Doug.
I like it, sounds good.
Yeah, anything else on the budget discussion?
No, I just think this isn't for right now, but I do think that if we ultimately end up deciding an override, that we need to consider moving away from having to have everything ready in one town meeting and fully go all in for an override budget. And then if the override fails at the ballot, then be prepared to go back before the end of the fiscal year with a cut budget. Again, because anytime that we start talking about cuts, also it becomes, well, we don't really need an override then, because look, we can cut and still make do. And that was some of the narratives that we got this year too, right? And as a result, we've utilized all of our free cash and our buildings continue to deteriorate and all of this. So that's something for the board to consider further down the road, not having to go in with multi iterations of a budget prepared at annual. And if it's going to be an override, then, and if the override fails, then we go back for a second.
Yep, absolutely. Any other discussion on the forecast? We have some good next steps. Tamika will. Yep. All right, so we will go back to the library. Thank you, everyone, for coming to have the discussion. I know you had a lot of visitors at your last meeting. I wanted to have this discussion again as we're going through the upcoming year, and again, having a lot of those moments where you understand what the budget cuts mean, you know, in reality, purchase services, I keep saying over and over again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything until you start feeling the downward impact. So the original request that I wanted here was because the library had, you were considering closing hours to account for the loss of the purchase services line item. So there were a bunch of people that came to discuss the impact that would have, primarily because this is the primary meeting space for all of our municipal boards and committees. And if it were to close and not be available, that would obviously have a significant impact on the town to be able to operate. So really, I just wanted to have the discussion on what can we do. It sounds, based on the meeting that you have a plan. So I just wanted to, for those the board members that were not able to attend, if you just wanted to kind of briefly summarize the discussion and what your plan that you voted on was, and then talk about what we can do, some of the ideas that we had brought up at that meeting to try and get us moving forward, you know, come the end of that time frame that you had. So
should we introduce ourselves? I don't know, in the meeting, I don't know.
We have Ally, so but
okay,
just
for
quickly.
So we have 4 of the trustees and the library director. I'm Ruth Ravesi from Maple Spring Drive, and I'm currently the chairperson.
Carrie Remington, library director.
Anita Byron from Mark Circle.
Teresa Santolo, Tarnock Hill Road. Jean Grant, I'm the secretary, Sycamore Drive.
Okay, so the library in the budget was cut about 11%, primarily for FY26, which starts July 1st, primarily from our purchase of service, which I heard discussed before, but for us very clearly is utilities. And also our supplies, which for the library is primarily books. So we were in discussion about how to live within that budget. One of the points that came out in our monthly meeting was that the library does have access to a small amount of funds from state aid, which comes from the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. And we have a gift account. We annually use that money to cover our operational expenses.
On top of any existing budget that we get. So if we get level funded, which we didn't get, which we're not projected to get this year, we still have to use those other sources of revenue to support our operating budget.
And that was a point, not to interrupt you, but that was a point of clarification for me, is that the budget they've requested from the town does not cover all the anticipated wages for the library staff.
Correct.
To be open, they utilize that state grant funding or their gift account to make up the difference. So that was information that I was not aware of previously.
You know, we want to be fiscally responsible. We looked at how can we reduce our budget. One of them was around staffing for the library aides. Those are hourly. We have 3 full-time positions, Carrie, or 3, we have a full-time director, full-time children's librarian, and then a part-time assistant director. And then we have people that are paid hourly. And for us, we would, if we were leading the conversation on cuts, we would have made some changes there. And we would accordingly cut back on some of the hours that the library is open. In talking about utilities and the use of this building, which is probably the most used building in the town. We're very aware of our partnership with the boards and committees and the select board. But as the trustees, our primary responsibility is to deliver a library to the town, and that is really important to us. So, if we had to cut hours, we were looking at how we could reduce utilities, because typically we're 10,000 or more over in the utilities account, and this year in particular, or the year coming up, we have no idea what the cost might be. So,
and that line specifically was cut like over 50%. So we're already well behind. Like, so we technically overspend on the utilities every year, which we take from our other sources of revenue. And so with the projection of being at negative 57%, like, we're screwed.
We started making plans for how we would implement this, and we got a lot of feedback from people that use the library for meetings, and we agreed at our last meeting that we would delay changing the hours and access to the building until October 1st. And there was some suggestions made about how we might increase our budget through different legitimate practices. We're very concerned, and I said this at town meeting, we're 1% of the town's budget, we serve everyone, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. It's really important to us that we offer a quality service. I did also mention that certification is important. The library gets certified based on the town's financial contribution. Does it reflect a certain percentage of our budget? It entitles us to have reciprocal privileges with other libraries, and if we lose that, our citizens cannot just go to Holden and take out a book, because we'll only have the collection that we have in this building. And it also could impact the ebooks, which have become increasingly popular with our patrons. So we're really looking to try to protect some of that. But we're happy to answer questions, or I did, you guys, anything we want?
I'll just add with the certification piece. So that's set forth by the state agency, which is the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. So we are currently, if we have to make changes like in October, we are at risk at losing that certification. And along with that, that means we are at risk at losing our state aid, which is that free source of revenue that we can use on like what's our operating budget. So everything impacts everything, and it's pretty bad.
It's a trickle-down effect.
Exactly.
So that's our pitch, no.
Now, at the last meeting, there was some ideas pitched. One of them was perhaps a warrant, an article in the warrant for additional monies to try to restore that purchase services line, so we could at least not quite get level funding, but maybe scrape by. Another option, which I think we're all personally interested in, is what's happened with warrants that have been like secured for various things in the library? Have they been totally expended? Can we transfer that? What's left? Can we transfer it? Can we transfer it to the operating funds? Can we do that in time for the fall town meeting? And I'm assuming other departments would be interested in those things as well. You know, cause it's money that's been allotted, but hasn't been spent all the way. Can we reclaim it for the operating budget, at least for this year and or next year, to see what's left?
So the reason I wanted to have this conversation again is because, you know, as important as the library is for the community, it's also important for the town government to operate. I mean, if the building closes down, I mean, we've had some impact statements that were written by some of the committees that they submitted with what that would mean. You know, many of our committees don't even meet until 7 o'clock because people have their full-time jobs and they're not available until later in the evening. And if the library were not available, there's very little alternate space that's open. So, you know, it's in addition to the impact on the community and losing potential certification, it's the town government operations as well. So there were definitely some ideas, and again, not necessarily anything that has to be decided tonight, but just, you know, open for discussion as we continue forward with the, you know, how do we handle this? Some of the ideas were, of course, you know, what might we have available to assist with ensuring the building stays open for operations, you know, with whatever one-time funds are left, you know, come fall town meeting time. I personally have been attempting to get the outstanding articles, special articles reviewed for the 2 years that I've been on the board, and that hasn't been done. And looking at those, there's 3 that pertain to the library for various projects. One of them, you know, was a landscape. Actually, 2 of them were actually reappropriations from another library article project that was done. But there's several $1,000s in there, and if those projects are complete, can that be a consideration for the fall special town meeting to reappropriate leftover monies for those library specific projects into their operating budget to again ensure that the building can stay open and the rest of the town can continue to have their meetings that are necessary for running the town. So I don't know if anybody's comments or discussion.
Jen, I agree with you about reappropriating those. I guess I would need to see what they were appropriated for.
Yep.
And can they be reallocated? And if so, I'm 100% for doing it. No sense in that money sitting there that's not doing it. It's not even earning interest. It's
Right.
just sitting there,
It's
so.
just sitting there, yeah,
We
and
can
that,
reappropriate it, I think it would be great.
yeah, and again, it's not just specific to the library, there's a bunch out here that have, some of them have been
know.
out here for 10+ years,
I
and it's
know.
money that's just sitting there, not being used, so that's why I wanted to go through the exercise of understanding what was the original appropriation for, has that been completed, and if it is, we should go through and close these out, and either return what's left to the general fund or reappropriate in certain circumstances
That sounds like a
as
great
needed,
agenda item.
so. Yes, I'm trying to slowly work my way through and claw through some of the, because, you know, even if you go through and look at the old warrants and
Right.
minutes, it doesn't necessarily tell you, you know, what the scope of the project was, or what the intent was, so it's gonna, I think, require some more legwork to go through past meeting minutes to understand what the original intent was and
Right.
has that been fulfilled or not, so. But I think my goal here was just to bring it before the board, get your feelings on, you know, the potential for the, you know, at the end of the day, the trustees have the authority over the building, and if they feel that in order to accommodate the budget cuts that they have, they need to close the library, we have to find alternatives for or not. The boards and committees just don't meet, or they meet significantly less frequently and business does not get done, so
Or everyone switches to Zoom.
or everybody switches to Zoom.
I do have a financial question, I don't know if you can answer it or not. I see throughout the year, your heat And obviously 23 was an anomaly year, I guess.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I think we had just opened after COVID. And I think we opened a little later than everyone else, and we also had some furnace, furnace issues, so we might have had a broken furnace or two in this building, which would have prevented the heat from being truly effective. I know I went insane looking to try to figure out why that happened. But you can see it very rarely matches up. We always spend a bit more on, that spreadsheet I gave you basically was our 5,200, our purchase service account.
And when I add the heat and electricity together, I get between 18 and 23 a year.
Right, so we don't even have enough for that, Harry.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm saying, which can fluctuate from year to year, but if we know that, take the average of, forget the 23, take the average of the other years and say it's even 20. That's a minimal funding that should be done. Okay. I get, what's computers? I can ask you.
That's just any software, I just use that as any software.
Okay.
Our operating system that we get through the Mass Library system, different things like that, our e-books, those kinds of things.
Okay. Why, let me ask this, where it's a town building, why are you paying for maintenance?
You tell us.
You tell us. That's, the maintenance
I mean, that's
is-
just a question I have, it's like,
Maintenance I consider to be cleaning products that we buy for this building. I consider it to be elevator repairs, elevator inspections, or whatever, any kind of something that we have to have someone come in and do to take care of the building. Furnace repairs, any kind of repairs that need to be made is maintenance.
Yeah,
Is
one
that-
time
is
it was
that-
the elevators.
is that budget money we give you,
That-
or
well, that's-
not coming out of your money? That's
Well,
coming-
Yes, it is. It's coming out of
See,
purchase services.
You can actually see.
Purchase services is
Purchase
the town.
services, what the town gives us, but you can see that usually we have to spend additional funds to
That's what I was
balance
getting
out.
at.
Yes.
But that,
So yes, we utilize the town's money first.
Okay.
but that was a point that came up in the meeting was, recognizing that while it's a library, it is utilized by the town for municipal operations, for meetings. And, in my opinion, again, recognizing that is it fair to provide the library with a budget for operating a library, quote unquote, but not accounting for all of the other municipal government operations that utilize it, and, accounting for that in their budget to make sure that we can continue to operate. It's not just a library.
Yeah,
So
and-
it's,
and also like to swing for the fences, because this entire building is the library, we actually don't really have enough staff for individuals to be here during off hours when these meetings are happening. Like you mentioned, like sometimes the select board meetings go till 10 o'clock. We really should have a staff member in the building because this is the library. And we don't have enough staff members as it is to even cover these after hours meetings. That would be the ultimate of having more staff members present to check the bathrooms, get the key at the end of the night. We don't even have, that's a dream, and to me, that's a safety issue that we can't even afford right now, so.
so just again, a consideration as we're talking budget related items, just taking into consideration that there's other things that.
In regards to the October issue, I would really like to work hard
Yeah.
to see if we can get those things taken care of, those old warrants.
If the board is amenable, I can work with Tamika to at least prioritize these 3 library articles to see if we can get all the information, what the original intent was, what the current balance that's left over in there. I mean, we can't do anything until, the fall town meeting anyways, but at least we'll have the information before us and
And we'll have a good
use that
idea
as far
come
as-
October, whether or not we can do this.
Right.
That's the key.
Right. And then that's based on what we can, do here, that's when the library will be reevaluating
Yeah.
if they need to change hours or whatnot, so.
I had a question about meetings. Must they, like all town-related boards and committees, must they take place in a public building in the town?
Yes.
Unless it's on Zoom? Could they do just strictly Zoom?
even,
It's allowed but discouraged.
right,
The state prefers at the very least a hybrid model where at least the chair is present in the room. And I will say that during COVID, when we were 100% remote, that in itself did present some challenges as well.
It's like special permissions, I think, at that point.
right,
Yeah.
and to
We
be
only
honest,
have two licenses still, right? So that right there causes a problem.
that causes a problem, and all of the equipment that we need for all of that is here. So if the building is not accessible and the cable staff can't get in to do all of that, you know, it's all that trickle down that goes with it, so even that could pose potential concerns, so. Leah, do you have any questions or comments that you wanna add?
Nope, thank you though.
Okay. Alright, so for,
I just,
She.
I guess what my question would be is, what is the cost of these meetings being in this building? I mean, do we have any idea about what the cost is to make up? If we don't have any more meetings after 5 o'clock or whenever the library is closed, what is the cost?
like, are you talking about financially or just?
Yes.
It really shouldn't be anything, I mean, you're talking lights for electricity,
I'm wondering what the cost is, so
it really shouldn't be
until you
much.
know that,
But it's not necessarily even a matter of the cost, it's if the building is closed, you know, I think we talked about depending on how your one source of funding goes, it can remain open for select board meetings, but any other committee that utilizes this building, FinCom, Concom, EDC, RDIC, they can't meet here. So how do they do their own business?
why,
We
It's
were,
not available.
we were just saying that we would limit use of the library when it's not open, to try to
Right.
consolidate.
Right.
And we recognize that that's an issue
Right.
for scheduling, but I mean, we would still have meetings, just, we're trying to.
It would have to be within the, like, a library hours, so if we close at 6 o'clock, the meetings have to be done by 5:45, which obviously isn't very conducive to like these kinds of meetings, but
I mean,
we don't have many alternatives with what we are dealing with.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, to answer your question, Carol, I guess as far as a cost savings, I would have to rely on the trustees to know that obviously it's an avenue that they felt that they had to go in order to accommodate it. If they don't, this is the only fund that they have to pay their utilities. They have the, you know, the spreadsheet here that outlines for the last several fiscal years what they've paid, and it doesn't cover even two of them, what they're allotted for their budget, so.
I understand that, but in the winter, you're not gonna shut off the heat. You're not gonna shut off the air in the summer. The other times you don't have anything going, so you're talking about
We do,
lights.
we can program the heat and air conditioning to, you know.
Well, like right now, I'm freezing, so the air could go, you know, that could go up a couple of notches. And I guess it's like throwing a dart and that's where it's gonna land. And I think that there is a cost savings that needs to be discussed. And otherwise, I think I don't see where that's working out to. You say no meetings and you don't know if you've saved anything.
I mean, there wouldn't really be savings, they're saying they're closing and therefore there will be no meetings, it sounds like that's what the,
But it's because to save money, but I'm not hearing that
I
there's a
don't think
savings.
that's the reason.
You don't think that's the reason, okay.
Through the chair. I guess a good indicator of that would be 2023, when you basically had COVID, but your electricity bill was still about $13,000 for the year.
Oh.
So you're gonna have the electric, whatever you have is pretty much linear, whether it's upstairs for your hours or down here for meetings. There isn't gonna be a major shift in the electricity bill, might be in the heat bill though, but I don't see that much in the electricity bill.
Well, then we'd have to do something more drastic, like just, you know, we're only open 2 days a week, cause otherwise there's no way to make a dent in this. You know?
No, my point is that we might be able to save a little, but I don't know, like, that we're gonna save a lot of electricity. I don't think that's a big issue. So, yeah, we should be funding electricity because until 8 o'clock or 9, whenever you shut the lights off, they're on. They're off during the day, pretty much every day from what you were telling me before. There's not a lot going on down here, so the lights don't need to be on. So that's a pretty constant there. So if you look at 12 and then for some reason it dropped down in 24, but then went back up in 25 to 15, and we know that electricity bills have been substantially higher in 2025, so that can account for some of that. So I would assume that your normal electricity bill without doing anything is probably gonna be about $13,000 a year.
Right, and you only have $2,000 left, so that's it.
So like, we were also saying the only other option is cutting staff, right? It's library aides, but we can't do that, right? Because that was.
Oh, well, I guess that was a question around the line item.
Yeah.
In the budget that we received, personnel account, the library aides, we discussed repurposing that money to cover some of the shortfalls, but I forget who told us that we needed the permission of the select board to make those kinds of transfers, I guess, is one thing we were looking at. So, I mean, books and staff are probably, our major investments.
If I may, Jen, in this past fiscal year, the town administrator and the accountant changed it so that departments could do interdepartmental transfers within their own line items without having to get select board and finance committee approval. That was just a formal communication to Austin and Donna to request to do that. If you wanted to transfer outside from department to department, that would require select board and finance committee. So there is flexibility between the line items.
Then that would be up to the trustees to decide how, if they wanna continue with aides, how many.
Right.
How often.
We
But then
really
we
try
could
to have
cut
at
numbers.
least 2 staff on at any time in case we have an emergency, we need someone to respond or call for help and, for safety purposes, so trying to take a look at that.
I mean, I think the primary avenue would be to look through the warrant articles to see if there's leftover money that we could use for that purpose. We could also look at putting an article for free cash. And then the worst case would be cutting some of the library aides. I mean, that seems like that's the order of priority for.
I agree.
what we do.
I would like to look at the library specific articles first, because this is not gonna be the only department where we're hearing that they're not gonna be able to pay their utilities. So we're gonna have to, prepare for that.
Can I just say something?
eventuality.
The aides do a lot. I have to say, they shelve all the books that come in, they take them in from the book drop, they put them in the system, they shelve them, they take care of the kids. There are kids, I gotta tell you. There are kids running around there all the time and somebody has to watch them, the parents don't. Sorry, but it's true. I was up there Tuesday and one little guy's running around. I had to say, stop, you can't be running in the library. And he looked at me like, oh. Parents never said anything.
Yeah, I mean, like if you lose the aides, you literally have 2.5 employees?
Right. And
For
they
this
answer-
entire building, all the time, for how many hours? 40 hours?
Yeah, I mean, that's.
And they answer phones.
That's a strain.
They answer questions. They read through and pick out old books that are no longer, viable for the library to keep. They go through, they pull them off the shelves. They work with the books that are brought in for, somebody dies and they bring in a bunch of books, they go through those. I mean, they just do so much.
It comes down to there's really nothing we can cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, with what you have.
Mike Pantos, Palmagussit Road. What is the town's electricity rate? I sure hope it's not through National Grid, because you're gonna be paying through the nose if you are. And if that is through National Grid, they did go up from 11 cents per kilowatt hour to 33 cents per kilowatt hour in 2023, which would be part of your electric usage. I'm not sure if it's, at least that was the residential rate, I'm not sure about commercial. And if it is through National Grid, why are we not using a cheaper supplier? Cause there's all sorts of them out there.
I was gonna say Austin was.
I thought we voted on something
Where,
like that.
what, I don't know where that is, but
So to Mike's question, we have a contract with Nexamp, and so through some of the solar fields that we have here in town, we do get certain credits on our National Grid bill. They usually equate to about $13,000 a month between all of our town buildings, so we are getting some cost savings in there, but the bills are still significant. So at the most recent annual town meeting, we did pass, we accepted MGL to be able to do like energy rate consolidation. At this point, it's just waiting on our new interim town administrator to meet with the folks at Good Energy. They have reached out to him so that we can move forward with that process.
Alright, so hopefully we'll.
Did you hear that? We are looking into cheapening your electric rates.
Sorry, if I may, I know the town also historically would look at the rates, because for a long time we were with Constellation. And so I'm not 100% sure if we're still with, if we're with National Grid currently or if we're with Constellation. But I know that it was something that the town did do.
Philosophically, since the bottom of the library is used for the rest of the town, is there a way to identify the cost for heat and electric and air, and that come out of a different line? Why is it coming out of the library budget? But we need to know the number.
Yeah, and that's part of what I had brought up and what kind of came up at the trustees meeting is it's not just used for the library specifically. So is there a way that we can account for something in their budget to ensure that they have funds to be able to remain open for the municipal use that's not related to library purposes? So I think those are just discussions that we'll have to have and figure out how we can make those determinations.
Through the chair. You don't have a separate meter, one for upstairs, one for downstairs, right?
It's all one.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, God, no. And there, I mean, no, I'm not an HVAC expert, but there's no way you could tell what's used downstairs versus what's used. There's 0% chance you could figure that out.
Jen, I know during some of our budget discussions, there was a talk about, transparency in the respect that the electricity bills are paid from several different sources in town. For example, the public safety building also pays it from their purchase services line item, and maybe talking about setting it up separately as its own line item to say, these are where the utilities for all of our town buildings are paid from.
Right.
Cause we really, at this point, it would be very difficult to track that.
Yeah.
We would have to literally take the bills and go bill by, cause we have it for our water treatment facility, we have our streetlights, it's all over town, but it's not transparent.
Okay. Alright, so for next steps, we will do some legwork to get information on the 3 library articles to bring forward. At least to have the board discussion, like I said, we can't do any reappropriating until the fall town meeting, but we'll make sure that information's available. And then we'll just continue the back and forth with the trustees and, open communication and just, like I said, work together to find a way to do what we can.
Yes. I mean, we agreed to the, status quo until October. I guess our concern is, should we not find additional funding, what we need to do to meet the budget is more harsh.
Yeah.
So, I know that everybody understands that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Any other questions, comments from the board?
I just think that, in all fairness, if we can get our job done, we'll be able to tell you how much of the reallocations you have coming.
Yes.
We'll cover that.
That would be useful, because then maybe we can take a look at what we have to see what we can figure out. But we don't know what money's out there because we don't know what money's out there, we only know what's in our universe, so.
I mean, as far as the warrant is concerned, the board usually puts together the warrant. And when you're doing reallocations, you don't get too much pushback at town meetings. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty much done deal, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
Jen, I would make the suggestion that you ask for all unexpended warrant articles, cause once this gets out,
Oh, yes.
just get it all done now.
Believe me, I've got my list here, I'm trying to comb through it to understand, it's just, like
I know the
there's stuff
finance committee's
everywhere.
been asking for years for the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
That's
Now's the time.
what I would like to do, but so yes, it's definitely on
time.
my radar, cause I agree, Karen, it's gonna come up.
Yep.
Alright, so we are good with libraries. Thank you again for
Thank you.
coming, appreciate it. I think
What would be
that's,
helpful for that, warrant article piece is to, somehow put a note to boards and committees to maybe help get the information for what each one is for, so that we're not digging through it to find it. Obviously, we still have to verify it, but for those that were like, we have no idea, where you're going through meeting minutes of past meetings, you know, somebody on a board may just know what that's for and be able to.
well, so I had actually been chatting with Tamika about this, cause I was like, so we have these special articles, is there some sort of a project plan or information pertaining to exactly what its intended purpose was, and there isn't.
Yeah.
So that's why we're stuck trying to find all the details, and like I said, not, the warrants don't necessarily
So now-
include everything.
So a couple years ago, I had put together a spreadsheet and I had gone through and tried to figure out what was what. So I do have somewhat of a starting point. I think it would just be some more due diligence on my part to go through and find, you know, where we are today, cause things have likely changed since that time. So I have something.
With an interim town administrator part-time, what's the realistic aspect that you're gonna get to something like that? I mean, I
It
honestly, like,
would be me. It
no,
would
I
have to be
know,
me.
but like.
He's
is
not
that-
going to be the one with the information. I have to go
I'm
out.
saying, are you gonna be able to do that in the time that, you know, it's gonna matter, you know what I mean? Like, do you have the time to
I
do
will
that?
try. No, but I will try.
It's in the
gonna
accounting
help you.
software.
We have all the articles.
Details of what it's for.
No, but it's in the accounting software, so at least you know what it's for. It'll say,
Oh, sure, yeah, it's got
so
the
at least
descriptions.
that's the best starting point to start there.
The,
Oh, yeah,
the
town-
hard part
town
is that
article.
some of them have balances and we don't
Yeah.
know if it's like the project was completed and this was what's left over, or if there's still something left to be done and we didn't do it, like did we not put it out to bid
But
or-
again, Donna should be able to show you what's hit there in the last 5 years.
Yes,
So
but
that you
my
can
my
see
point
it.
is what was the scope of the original project that it was appropriated for, and has that been completed? Because I don't know if there's this, some of these, like I said, they've been out here for 10 years, are we utilizing that and as a way to say, well, I need X amount of dollars for this? It could file under this little leftover balance that we have over there, we'll just charge it to that account. That's what I wanna make sure that we have exactly what the intended purpose was, so we can say, has this been completed? If so, close it out, put it back in the general fund or reappropriate it as necessary, but I wanna make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that those projects are completed based on what the expectation was before we do that, so that's, like I said, this has kind of been one of my things too, so I'm gonna, do some legwork on my own and with Tamika to
'Cause I know
help
we've
find that
asked
information.
For the finance committee for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess
Okay.
once we get that finalized, we should share it with whoever.
Yes, yep, so we will get that in progress and see what we can come up with.
And in all actuality, you might wanna put it out to see if somebody is willing to help do that, because there are people that might be willing to give some assistance to look through stuff. I'm not volunteering by any means, but I'm just saying,
Are you
there
sure?
are some people, there are some people that would be willing to sit and look through piles and piles of dusty papers.
We'll see what we can find.
I have
We'll
10-year-old meeting minutes in my office as we speak in a binder that just
Yeah,
haven't had time to
I'm
look
waiting,
at.
I'm waiting, I'm
Yeah.
coming up. Alright, so we are good with special business. Are there any future agenda requests by any board members?
Not tonight.
Okay, I did, I know I had mentioned last time the discussion on the exit interviews and the feedback for that. I think we reviewed reasons and there's nothing that qualifies for an executive session, so we still wanna have that conversation, but just again, if we're talking about framing feedback, just remember it will be an open session, so we just wanna, talk about the feedback that we got and tie that into, as we're going through the new process for finding a permanent TA, what are the expectations this board has of a permanent town administrator, responsibilities, roles, working in tandem with the select board, trying to iron out those details so that we can, do whatever we feel is necessary, when we hire a permanent TA. So gonna try and get that onto either the next agenda or the one after, we have to see what's coming up. We've had a couple of big ticket items, so I didn't wanna be here till 10 o'clock, so And I also thought it was good for David to be part of that conversation, again, just with providing his experience and any of his feedback as far as roles, responsibilities, things along those lines too, so.
Go ahead, sorry.
And then kind of, again, similar, related to that, I did wanna also have a discussion on, priorities for David as the interim TA. We know he's part-time, so really wanted to make sure that we're giving him direction on what he should focus on. Obviously, there's a lot going on and he's not gonna be able to do everything. So with regards to, what do you see as priorities that, need his attention? Things that we should hold off until we have a permanent town administrator, things like that, so just giving that some food for thought. Anything else for future agenda?
Did we ever land on an action item for the legal policy changes?
I still have it on my to be discussed list, and really that was just gonna center around any potential changes we wanted for the policy.
Do we wanna put that on that's a future agenda?
Yeah, I
so
have it on my list of
alright.
things to bring up. I said, I've just been trying to juggle some of the, what we've have to discuss and how long it's gonna take so that we're not here till all hours of the night, but it's still on my list to bring forward, so. Leah, anything for you for future?
I think I'm good.
Okay. So then our next upcoming meetings, we have July 7th after the 4th of July holiday. That's the one where I'm hoping we will have all the information we need to discuss the water sewer rate setting. Fingers crossed. Then we have July 21st and August 4th for future meetings. Is there anything else to come before the board before we adjourn to executive session? Okay, are we not, we're adjourning from executive session? Okay. So if there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session for reason number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. The subject, discussion of properties going through land court process, tax title.
So moved.
Second.
Great, roll call, Alex?
Hold on.
Second, aye.